Chapter 7. The Dead Sea Scrolls. For over a decade, nations suffered through the blood and devastation of World War II. Then finally the announcement of peace gave relief to the whole earth. But the thunder and smoke had hardly settled when another worldwide, revolutionary proclamation was made. This was the announcement of one of the greatest discoveries ever made in the field of biblical archaeology. In 1947, a cave near the Dead Sea offered up a treasure of ancient manuscripts, portions of the Old Testament predating any others by about 1,000 years. But this was just the beginning of the discovery of hidden caves and ancient manuscripts in that area. Picture of area around Dead Sea. Location of the Qumran Caves near the Dead Sea, where over 400 manuscripts have been found. Several vague and uncertain stories have been told of how the first of these scrolls were discovered. One story is of a Bedouin accidentally wandering into the cave, and another is of a poor peasant searching for sabak, a soft soil used for fertilizer. And then there's an interesting account of some smugglers who were trying to find a place to hide. Perhaps the most reliable story, however, is told about the young boy, Muhammad ad-Dib, who had been tending his animals. He had lost a goat and was climbing up the limestone cliff searching for it. He became tired and hot, so he rested in the shade of an overhanging crag, when suddenly his eye caught a strange hole in the face of the cliff. It was less than 2 feet around, and not particularly wanting to explore it at the time, he picked up a stone and threw it through the hole. Instead of the expected sound of rock hitting rock, he heard the crashing of earthen jars. As he pulled himself up to the hole and peered in, he saw a startling sight. There on the floor of the cave were several large cylindrical jars with broken pieces all around. It looked like hidden treasure. He dropped back down to the ground and dashed to tell his discovery to a friend. The next day they returned and entered the cave, where they found jars lined in rows on each side. Some jars were empty, and others contained bundles of rags. Pulling away some of the wrapping, they uncovered rolls of smooth brown leather with inscriptions on them. The young boys were disappointed because they were searching for a treasure like gold or silver. However, what they had found was more precious than gold or silver, but at the time they didn't realize that. Picture. Cave number 1Q of the Wade Qumran, in which the young shepherd boy found jars containing inscriptions written on pieces of leather. Stories abound of how some of the leather scrolls were cut up and used for sandal straps, fuel for fires, and even for wrapping fish. Some were just thrown away as worthless scraps of old leather. The Bedouins eventually brought 3 scrolls into Bethlehem when they came to sell their milk and cheese. Here they met a local antique dealer by the name of Kando, who bought them for a small price, not considering them worth much more. The writing was meaningless to him, but he thought that it might have worth to someone in Jerusalem. So he took the scrolls to the larger city and presented them to the Syrian convent of St. Mark for an evaluation. From here the story becomes a little difficult to unravel, mainly because all archaeological material is supposed to belong to the government, and under the laws any private excavations were illegal. Also, secrecy and fear created problems, and perhaps damage, to many of these kinds of archaeological findings. At first, many scholars examined the scrolls. Some declared they were forgeries, while others were puzzled and curious. Finally, they were photographed and the pictures sent to Dr. William F. Albright of the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. After studying them carefully, he wrote the now famous and startling announcement: "My heartiest congratulations on the greatest manuscript discovery of modern times. There is no doubt in my mind that the script is more archaic than that of the Nash papyrus. I should prefer a date around 100 BC. What an absolutely incredible find. And there can happily not be the slightest doubt in the world about the genuineness of the manuscript. Imp. Era 6912. By the time the real value of the scrolls had been realized, the Arab-Israeli War of 1948 made it impossible for this first cave, 1Q, to be scientifically explored. However, later in 1949 this was done, and other caves were also searched, resulting in the discovery of many manuscripts and portions of manuscripts. In March of 1952, a cave was discovered containing scores of leather fragments, over 30 storage jars, 2 jugs, a lamp and 2 copper scrolls. These copper scrolls were taken to the Palestine Archaeological Museum, where they rested for 3 years, awaiting some solution to the problem of how to unwrap the scrolls without damaging the inscriptions. It was finally decided to cut them in strips, which resulted in only a 5% loss to the inscriptions. After cutting and studying the 23 strips of the 8-foot document, it was discovered to be a treasure map showing locations of over 200 tons of gold, silver, vessels, and artifacts. John Allegro, who worked on these scrolls, said, In my opinion, there is no doubt of its genuineness, nor of the source of this vast wealth. Listed along with gold and silver bullion are sacred vessels of a kind known to have been used in the temple worship, leaving little doubt that this is the long-lost treasure of the Jerusalem sanctuary, destroyed by Titus in AD 70, previous to the final siege. Apparently, the Jews in the city had wisely taken the precaution of salting away this vast wealth in predetermined hiding places in and around the city itself, and in the deserts to the northeast and east. Mystery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Allegro, page 194. The map recorded on these scrolls mentioned about 60 different sites all over Palestine, where treasures were hidden. For example, under the plaster floor of a room in the Qumran monastery was found a hoard of 558 Tyrian tetradrachmi coins. The weight of these coins was about 20 pounds. Their present value would be about $1 million. Some scholars believe these to be only part of the treasures mentioned in the Copper Scrolls. The location of these gold coins was described on the Copper Scrolls. So far, no one has mentioned finding any other treasures that were mentioned on these scrolls. The value of these Dead Sea manuscripts has been astounding. 4 scrolls of the original discovery were sold for $250,000, another for $90,000, and others were valued and sold for various amounts. Because of these prices, speculators, archaeologists and treasure hunters have been attracted to the area from all over the world. Since this first discovery, there have been hundreds of caves explored, revealing over 400 manuscripts and tens of thousands of manuscript fragments. In over 100 of the manuscripts are found quotations from nearly every book in the Bible. The greatest find of manuscripts was located in the Wadi Qumran Cave No. 4. This proved to be the remains of a library belonging to a Jewish community, existing from 170 BC to 70 AD. About 11 caves in this area yielded up a vast amount of records clarifying many textual and historical problems, but creating many unanswered questions as well. Discoveries of more caves and manuscripts continue, and Bedouin tribesmen will probably continue to trade, bargain and sell pieces, and even complete scrolls for years to come. Since the discovery of the first Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947, a phenomenal amount of publications have been put out on this fascinating subject. Einar Eriksson says, if one were to read one book or publication a week, it would take 14 years to read all that has appeared on the Dead Sea Scrolls. It would require the same intensity of reading for 2 years to read what has appeared in English alone. More than 800 books and articles have appeared since 1947. Do you know what the Dead Sea Scrolls are? Eriksson, pages 1 to 2. There are many types of literature contained on the scrolls. However, much of the information is biblical in nature. They consist of psalms, sermons, hymns, thanksgivings, and historical or doctrinal expositions, most of which are unfamiliar to historians and theologians. Some of the titles that have been determined are The Sayings of Moses Testimonia, The War Scroll Book of Mysteries, Patriarchal Blessings Wisdom, The Coming Doom Psalm D, Book of Lamech Jubilees, Testament of Levi the New Covenant, Gospel of Truth Gospel to the Egyptians, Secret Book of James Apocalypse of Paul, Letter of the Law the Wanderous Child, Epics of Time the Last Words of Amram, Apocalypse of Peter Letter of Peter to Philip, Gospel of Mary. Many others have been found which included the Apocrypha, but most of them have yet to be translated and made available to the public. Some of the more interesting manuscripts are prophetic, and scholars have speculated that they were meant to be discovered in the latter days. As Hugh Schonfield wrote, it would appear that in the caves of the Khirbet Qumran area, we have stumbled upon books designed for the faithful in the last great struggle with evil, books for the skilled to understand, and not meant to be accessible before the time. Secrets of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Schonfield, page 159. The Khirbet Qumran, meaning the ruins of Qumran, has provided archaeologists with astounding discoveries that have excited public interest throughout the world. Archaeologists have uncovered portions of the foundations of the Qumran community and have reconstructed realistic maps and models. Map of the Qumran Monastery Foundation as it may have appeared about the time of Jesus. Scholars of the Qumran texts are trying to find similarities to the Masoretic text, which is the closest resemblance to the modern Bible translation. But even with the Dead Sea Scrolls, we find translation errors. Yet, even at Qumran, it can hardly be doubted that the Montana, Masoretic text was gaining ground by its intrinsic merit, and it is certainly well represented among the biblical fragments from the fourth cave, as well as the Isaiah scrolls from the first. It was never inviolate. However, changes from its prototype have certainly been introduced over the centuries of its transmission. whether from slips of the pen or deliberate alterations, to smooth over inherited difficulties in the reading, or even to introduce readings more in conformity with the theological standpoint of the time. Sometimes in Qumran fragments, we have a variant reading of a difficult passage which offers nothing in clarification over Montana. It at least shows that both texts found the same difficulty and tackled it in different ways. All this demonstrates that, although the standard text of our Bible is certainly very old and very reliable, it has not been without some scribal errors and adjustment, which will not allow for it any false claims of originality. The Dead Sea Scrolls, John Allegro, pages 79 to 80. John also gives an explanation for changes made by both ancient and modern translators when he said, "The public, one presumes, is more interested in having a translation which is as near as possible what the prophet spoke or wrote, than an accurate rendering of a particular Hebrew manuscript." The Dead Sea Scrolls, Allegro, page 82. Many of the teachings of the Qumran community are so closely identified with Christianity that it has caused great enthusiasm among Christian scholars. Yet, so many texts are filled with the law of Moses that it is a puzzle as to their real identity. However, the teachings of both Old and New Testament are in agreement with the doctrines of Mormonism. Einar Eriksson has studied these comparisons and wrote, "These documents contain many interesting doctrinal parallels found only in LDS literature." Do you know what the Dead Sea Scrolls are? Eriksson, page 10. It is not necessary here to make an intensive doctrinal study comparing the Dead Sea Scrolls with Mormon doctrine. However, religious teachings from the scrolls are of great interest, and a few of them are outlined on the following pages, as explained by noted scholars. Led by a prophet. According to the Qumran exegetes, the prophets knew by revelation what God was going to do at the end time, but they did not know when the end time would come. This additional revelation was given by God to the teacher of righteousness, who communicated it to his disciples. They had accordingly an insight into the meaning of the prophetical oracles which was denied to other Jews, and they were conscious of the favor which God had bestowed on them by initiating them into the mysteries of his purpose, and the time and manner of its fulfillment. Illustrated Bible Dictionary, Tyndale House Publishers, 1373. A great prophet at the second coming of Christ. From the scrolls we learn that the people were waiting for three particular figures, as foretold in the Old Testament. 1. A prophet like Moses. 2. A Davidic Messiah. And 3. A great priest of Aaron's line. The latter would be the head of state in the New Age. This David Messiah would be a warrior prince who would lead the hosts of Israel in victory over the sons of darkness. And describing the third figure, the prophet, like Moses, would communicate the will of God to his people at the end of the age, as Moses had done at the beginning of their history. But until that time of restoration, the community constituted of a living temple, the general membership being the holy place, and the inner council the Holy of Holies, with praising lips and obedient lives as acceptable sacrifices. Illustrated Bible Dictionary, Tyndale House Publishers, 1372. Secret Doctrine of God's Identity. One tradition attributed to him, Valentine, the poetic, evocative gospel of truth that was discovered at Nag Hammadi. Valentinus claims that besides receiving the Christian tradition that all believers hold in common, he has received from Theudas, a disciple of Paul's, initiation into a secret doctrine of God. Paul himself taught this secret wisdom. He says, not to everyone, and not publicly, but only to a select few whom he considered to be spiritually mature. Valentinus offers, in turn, to initiate those who are mature into his wisdom, since not everyone is able to comprehend it. The Gnostic Gospel, Elaine Pagels, page 43. The Trinity. The Apocryphon of John relates how John went out after the crucifixion with Great grief, and had a mystical vision of the Trinity. He saw in the light a likeness with multiple forms and the likeness had three forms. This Gnostic description of God, or the Godhead as Father, Mother, and Son, may startle us at first, but on reflection, we can recognize it as another version of the Trinity. The Gnostic Gospels, Pagels, page 61. Jesus was married. The title of the Gospel of Mary suggests that its revelation came from a direct, intimate communication with the Savior. The hint of an erotic relationship between him and Mary Magdalene may indicate claims to mystical communion. The Gnostic Gospels, Pagels, page 21. Marriage and children in heaven. In this regard, one of the worst things that could befall a member of the community was to go so far astray from the covenant that they would be prohibited from having children in the hereafter. 1 QS IV 14 and 1 QSV 13. Do you know what the Dead Sea Scrolls are? Einar Eriksson, page 13. A divine mother in heaven. From the secret book comes an account of our immortal mother. She is the image of the invisible, virginal, perfect spirit. She became the mother of everything, for she existed before them all. The Gnostic Gospels, Pagels, page 62. Members of this group prayed to both the Divine Father and Mother, from the Father, and through the Mother, the two immortal names, parents of the Divine Being, and thou, dweller in heaven, humanity, of the mighty name. Gospel of Philip. Other texts indicate that their authors had wondered to whom a single, masculine God proposed. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, Gen. 1:26. Since the Genesis account goes on to say that humanity was created male and female, some concluded that the God in whose image we are made must also be both masculine and feminine, both father and mother. The Gnostic Gospels, Pagels, page 59. Note: the Jewish, Christian, and Islam religions indicate that God the Father is masculine. If there is a masculine father, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume a feminine mother? The Catholics regard Mary as the mother of God, yet they deny her divine claim as God the Mother. But the Dead Sea Scrolls indicate a family relationship in the councils of the gods, as a father, mother, and son. The Melchizedek priesthood. Indeed, in one of our texts, the future Messianic king is identified with Melchizedek, king of Shalom, mentioned in Genesis 14:18-20. Dead Sea Scriptures, Theodore H. Geister, page 26. As for the priesthood, they shall be a seat for the Holy of Holies, inasmuch as all of them will have knowledge of the covenant of justice, and all of them be qualified to offer what will be indeed a pleasant savor to the Lord. Dead Sea Scriptures, Geister, page 61. They are to extend forgiveness to all among the priesthood that have freely enlisted in the cause of holiness, and to all among the laity that have done so in the cause of truth, and likewise to all that have associated themselves with them. Dead Sea Scriptures, Geister, page 52. The 12 Apostles. There are 12 men of holiness who act as general guides of the community, a remarkable correspondence with the 12 Apostles. These men have 3 superiors, answering to the designation of John, Peter, and James, as the 3 pillars of the Church. Dead Sea Scriptures, Geister, page 39. For administrative purpose, there is also a kind of presbytery, consisting of 3 priests and 12 especially qualified laymen. These presbyters are known as the men of holiness. The Dead Sea Scriptures, Geister, page 11. As in the New Testament, where the 12 apostles are the next tribal chiefs, and the letter of James is addressed to the 12 tribes of the dispersion, so among the community, the tribal system corresponded to an ideal. Thus, the Supreme Council in the pre-Messianic age appears to have been formed by 12 laymen and 3 priests. The Dead Sea Scrolls in English, G. Verms, pages 17-18. The executive head of the party seems to have been a special council of 12 men and 3 priests, ideally representing the 12 tribes of Israel, and the 3 priestly families descended through the 3 sons of Levi. The Dead Sea Scrolls, Allegro, page 112. Bishops, priests, and deacons. It has, as we have seen, been suggested also that the office of bishop in the church has its origin in the Qumran overseer. The Dead Sea Scrolls, Allegro, page 163. So today one man is bishop and tomorrow another. The person who is a deacon today, tomorrow is a reader. The one who is a priest today is a layman tomorrow. For even on the laity, he imposed the functions of priesthood. The Gnostic Gospels, Pagels, page 51. The priests alone are to have authority in all judicial and economic matters, and it is by their vote that the ranks of the various members of the community are to be determined. The Dead Sea Scriptures, Geister, page 63. Literal descendants of Aaron as bishops. It is interesting to note that only the sons of Aaron were entitled to be the bishops of the community, and that there was a presiding bishop over all of the bishops. CD and 1QS. Do you know what the Dead Sea Scrolls are? Erickson, page 13. Excommunication. Furthermore, if any member of the council transgressed the law of Moses, either deliberately or through negligence, he was expelled forthwith, and none of his former brethren were permitted to have any contact with him. The Dead Sea Scrolls in English, Verms, pages 27-28. Revelation from God. In the Book of Hymns, the faithful frequently declare that they stand in the eternal congregation of God, hold direct converse with him, and share the lot of the holy beings. The Dead Sea Scriptures, Geister, page 14. No priestcraft. At one time they put novices in office, at another persons bound by secular employment. The Gnostic Gospels, Pagels, pages 50-51. Rewards for the righteous. In the Manual of Discipline, it is said that, if the community abide by the prescribed rules, It will be a veritable temple of God, a true holy of holies. Page 15. The members of the community style themselves the elect or the elect of God. The Dead Sea Scriptures, Geister, page 14. The Manual of Discipline says that the faithful will receive a crown of glory. Peter and James and John, it is true, use a similar image. But in Mandean thought the lustrous crown plays an extremely important role, and is frequently mentioned in the hymns of the sect. The Dead Sea Scriptures, Geister, pages 21 to 22. United Order. All goods and wages are placed in a common pool, administered by an overseer or superintendent. A similar officer presided over the allocation of communal tasks and duties.